So, morning everybody, and welcome to the Supply Chain Sustainability School's business bite around delivering in challenging economic times. So this is the second in a series of business bites that we're running with the Supply Chain School, and this actually follows on from procuring in challenging times. So as it says there on the screen, my name's Marc Worrall, CEO of BBI Services. So we are very integrated with the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and as it says there on the bottom, I chair with Heptonstall, the Director of Supply Chain Sustainability School, the Operational Efficiency Leadership Group. So for those of you who know the school, there's lots of quite a few different leadership groups, and this is the one that Ian and I sort of co-chair. And within that, and within the school, we deliver a number of workshops, lunch and learn. So this is the more expanded business bite that we're running now. This event is being recorded, so just wanted to let everybody know right at the start that this is actually being recorded. And what we've done for this next 2 hours is assembled what we feel is a really challenging, knowledgeable, experienced group of industry professionals to really help us go through what are the challenges and how might we go about tackling some of those today. So Alfie, do you want to move on to the next slide? As all of you will know, whether dealing with us or dealing with the school, we're very participative. So please do put questions into the chat and we'll try and answer them as we go along a little bit, as well as we have Q&A sessions. We'll also be doing some polls and some Mentimeter questions, so we want you to participate in those, and all the slides will be distributed to everybody, hopefully by maybe the end of play today, or at least by lunchtime tomorrow, and the video recording will be made available by about the middle of next week. So hopefully the next 2 hours is very interactive. Well, it should be very interactive. Alfie, do you want to go on to the next one? Before we really get going, we want to just test out the Mentimeter process and just get a feel for where you are and who you are in terms of today's attendees. So if you could just scan that code, it'll take you straight to the Mentimeter website and a question, or type in menti.com into your browser, web browser, and that will bring up the website, and then you can enter that code that we've got on the screen there, the 77381. So if we just give that a couple of minutes, and that should ask the question, where are you in the supply chain? And in the, are you, well, so we've got one designer, that's good. But are we, subcontractors, main contractors, suppliers? Yeah. Quite a few suppliers, others, interesting. And designers, and at this stage very few or no clients, which is interesting. Okay, so that's given us a good feel for its main contractors and subcontractors and suppliers that we've got here today, and some designers and professional advisors, in fact more designers, so that's good. Good mix of people we've got here today. Okay, cool. So also the panelists will have seen all of this, so we're actually getting a good feel. Interesting that the second highest one is others, so that's good. Interesting to find out how they are. Right, Alfie, if we move on to the next sort of slide, this one was just to sort of check what roles we have in the business. So if you could also enter the, so we've got commercial procurement, sustainability, again, design, operations, and others, so quite a mix of people. Cool. Commercial and procurement there, quite a high mix, which Graham will be able to challenge as well, and the others. Okay, so if we move on to the next stage, Alfie. So before we launch into things, we wanted to just set the scene a little bit in terms of, well, why are we here today? And it is that picture, if you like, or even the top strap line around making the boat go faster. So making our programs better quality, go faster, higher productivity, and more effective from end to end. And so we take that sporting analogy to actually look at unearthing everything that's possible for us to improve, and I think Kimberley will be talking later about, it's not just about being busy nowadays. We've actually got to step back, look at everything we're doing, every opportunity, and are we actually adding value? So we want you to be thinking all of this today around that key principle, whichever sport you might like, and even if it's not sport, whatever we do, how are we going to make the boat go faster, and explore every opportunity and tackle those real levers to drive performance in our area, whether, as we were saying there, it's procurement, supply chain, or any area within the project. So that's just to sort of set the scene. And if we move on to onto this next slide, Alfie. So that's why we're here, to actually challenge ourselves, because what you'll find out of panel 3, we have some real massive data, excellent data around the scale of the challenge. But we'll split today down into 3 panels with 3 groups. The first panel, well, each panel, if I just run through that, each panel has a chair, and then 3 panelists, a brief presentation, and then an extended Q&A where we'll be doing some of the Mentimeter questioning. So the panels themselves, with the first one sort of looks at on-site delivery performance improvement. So we'll move on to that shortly. The second one looks at the off-site and delivery performance and non-construction processes as well. So very interesting group of people presenting and discussing that. And the third panel includes what we're looking at in terms of pre-con and the upfront design processes and setting things up for success, so we can actually make our way through the project and the processes as efficiently, as effective, and even, as Tony will be saying, with an end in mind as well. But that also includes, in panel 3, some real data around the scale of the opportunity we have available to us. And just in terms of who we've got on the panels today, we've got all sorts of people from different areas within the supply chain, representing areas, leadership council, major institutions like Institution of Civil Engineers. We've even got someone who's what we would class as a sort of gamekeeper turned poacher now. So ex-client has now moved into the contracting world. So real mix of people to be talking through the panels. Alfie, do you want to move on to the next one? So that's enough of an introduction. And I did have a mild panic this morning when James rang me first thing to say he's got COVID and a sore throat as to whether he was actually going to be able to do today. And I've had to step in as our chair as well. So I'm going to chair this first panel. So could I just ask the 3 panelists just to do a brief introductions of yourselves, starting with yourself, James, and your croaky voice?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Mark. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Sorry for my voice. I think it's something that we're all coming to terms with at some point or other over the last couple of years, but it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a project director for Laing O'Rourke and currently leading the Olympia redevelopment project out in West London, but have been in and around major building and infrastructure projects for the last 20 years or so.
Thanks, James. Marc?
Yes, thank you, Mark. So you've got another Mark on the line, 2 Marks for the price of 1. Also working under Mr. Worrall's team there, working with BBI services. So I head up the operations for BBI, working across all of our teams, our projects and initiatives. And in essence, my background sort of getting on 25 years now, essentially deploying lean and world-class ways of working in a whole host of sectors. But that's me. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fahey. I'm previously managing director of a company called Horizon Offsite, which was procured by ETEX some years ago. So at the moment, I head up the sales commercial department for ETEX New Ways, which is basically an offsite organization within eTex that sells offsite solutions to the construction market. And I have probably been in this industry a lot longer than I like to admit, so with the last maybe 30 years.
I think, thanks very much, everybody. I think we've all been in it much longer, but grey ahead, apart from Marc. So, Marc, if we hand over to you, you're going to do a brief present of about 8 minutes just to run through, just to set some scenes and to challenge everyone's thinking. So I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Okay. Right, so delivering in challenging economic times. Yeah, it's all about, in my mind, kind of creating resilience ultimately, and what's the key essence of that, and that really enables us to deliver not just in challenging times, but every time, really. Is it the process? Is it how we kind of measure performance? Is it digital solutions? Well, the crux of it, it's all about our people. No surprises there. And really, this is our acid test to say that really helps gauge, are we really able to deliver and mobilize our teams in these challenging times? So the people that we've got turning up, are they really showing up? And if you look at or consider all the people in your teams as a whole, where would you place your team overall on this kind of happy scale, on our 0 to hero scale, as we've got there? So it's on this scale of 0 to 10. How actively engaged are our people? Have we got people kind of turning up, showing and going through the motions, clock watching, just wanting to get through the day? Or have we got people that are rock stars in front, not just kind of getting the job done, but seeing how we can make the job better? That's the crux of it, really. So the more heroes that we've got, everyday heroes at the front, driving things forward, looking for slicker, better ways of working, trying to make today better than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow, then we're really in a really good position to combat and embrace these challenging times. So that's the essence, really, of the next few slides. It is all about our people. So how can we get a team of everyday heroes? So the first thing to consider is it's all about the readiness and ability of our teams and our individuals against their readiness of and ability, rather, in terms of delivering the responsibilities. So first off, are the responsibilities absolutely kind of crystal clear? Is everyone on point, knowing exactly what's expected of them? Because sometimes there's a lot of grey areas in that relatively simple question to start with. And then once people have got absolute clarity in terms of what's expected, then the next question is, okay, so how ready and able are they to actually deliver on their responsibilities? And just looking at those first two kind of axes, it's amazing when you actually start getting into this, the opportunities that start to we start to surface. So you can just almost think, I always say, ultimately as leaders, we need to be the products of the product. So if you bear this kind of in mind just for yourselves in your own role, and just think, well, where would you actually kind of fit on this kind of scale here? How able and ready are you to deliver all the responsibilities that you've actually got on your plate? I am absolutely kind of really comfortable with it. Is it business as usual? You're not breaking a sweat? Or are we sometimes overstretched and kind of beyond the stretch zone? So we've got all this anxiety, potential of lack of support, lack of appreciation, and sleepless nights, all that kind of side of things. So have a feel for or gauge rather for where you're currently sitting in your own role, and then also reflect on, well, where do you see actually individuals in your team? And sometimes if we're really ready and able and raring to go, but we're not given the responsibility to actually do that, then that can push us in what I call here this zone of frustration. Okay, and which isn't a good place to be either. So we really want to avoid our people and ourselves getting into this zone of frustration, or into the danger zone, as I call it up there, this zone of anxiety. The sweet spot is where we're beyond business as usual, so not just getting the job done, but stretching, performing in a stretch zone, slightly area of pushing us into our sort of area of where we're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and reaching for betterment where possible. So that's a key point. So that's a little takeaway. And again, we'll share these slides afterwards, but it's a useful little tool, very simple, just to gauge, well, where are we kind of feeling at the minute, where as individuals, and where do we think key people in our team currently are performing? And I've used this in the past for in one-to-ones with my previous teams and that. So yeah, have a think about that. I also thought in terms of delivering in challenging times, I had the luxury of, this is one of my old bosses, Michael Dell there, the main man in Dell. And when you look at Dell, Dell's a classic example of a real resilient organization, and they've transformed their products and solutions and services to meet the kind of current times, and been really successful all the way through. And so what makes Dell ultimately the success that it is today, and how do they actually get through all the challenges that have smacked them time and time again? Ultimately, it comes from this boy at the top, Michael Dell there, but there's some key things. So first off, that second point there, they're resolute. They've got a strong code within Dell, so 100,000 people in Dell, shared values that are really truly lived and not laminated, and everyone is clear on exactly where their purpose is and where that lies, and it's followed through and supported all the way time with the appropriate questioning and motivation from the boy at the top. And almost married to that, everyone within Dell is recruited to that bottom piece there, that bottom statement. It's that want to do attitude and a can-do capability. And they've got various mechanisms and systems in Dell that help ensure and build people up so that their attitude is in the right place, but their capabilities are continually growing to align and help push Dell where it needs to be, and always look beyond the here and now to try and tease out what potentially is coming and how they can exploit further issues as real opportunities in the future. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that, because you can do some more research on it, but yeah, it's a fantastic company and a good example. Lots of things that we can steal with pride and benefit from across the sector that we're now in. And I just thought I'd share some top tips as well as food for thought. So ultimately, delivering in challenging times is, we need to get three things kind of right. We need the right environment, we need strong communication in place, and then really the engine behind it all, linking back to our people, is this recognition and opportunity. So creating the right environment, first off, we need to maintain a healthy sense of urgency and crisis. So there should always be a burning platform. In challenging economic times, there's an increase in burning platform, but ideally to invigorate the right culture and ensure that we've got this agile response and reaction when hard times hit, we always need to maintain a healthy sense of urgency and crisis, always maintain a burning platform. Ensure that the working environment also positively encourages teamwork. So it's always kind of a problem shared, and surfacing things, bringing them to the surface, not hiding problems, as an example. And almost linking to that, being conscious that we're not managing and running businesses from reports or behind computers. The workplace is always the teacher, and the opportunities and the answers that we can find, and the solutions even are always found more often than not actually in the workplace itself. So our first point is kind of go, look, see every time, and have that connection with our teams, and having that connection and seeing the workplace as a teacher also helps us to see, well, how actively engaged are our teams, and what potentially is disengaging them. Yeah, we can put ourselves in their shoes. Right, strong communication. So that starts with linking back to our responsibilities on that other little chart, is like aligning to our responsibility. I always say this kind of, to get things right before we go into kind of lean ways of working or doing anything too sophisticated, we need to help people be clear on what they're expected to do, strong measures and targets, and really clear of what's in their area. So teams need strong targets, and kind of linked to that, we don't want to make them too aspirational so that we've only got one opportunity to celebrate success. We need to, the old American term against it, stolen from my Dell days, swing for hits and not home runs. Yeah, so we want to be mindful of where ultimately the end goal, but set those incremental targets along the way, which give us the opportunities to really recognize success, motivate our teams, help them feel valued, and get on point to deliver what's expected. Almost touched on it further up. Waste is hidden. Don't hide it, make everything visible. All these problems that are kind of hidden, and maybe there's a bit of a fear factor kind of involved, or if there's blame, there's a claim, all that kind of thing. And we need to kind of get away from that and surface all these opportunities for us to kind of collectively see how we can resolve them and exploit them in the best way possible. And fundamentally, keep everything really simple. You probably heard that loads of times, but the easier it is for people to get around things, digest things, and get on board, the easier it is for them to actually engage and play their part. Recognition and opportunity. So ultimately, our teams won't deliver the value that truly matters unless they're actually valued themselves. So as leaders, we need to really ensure that our teams truly feel valued, and that will bump up that engagement scale considerably. But we need to, when we're hunting out these opportunities, there's no point kind of almost letting perfect be the enemy of good. We need to be fast and start now, start today, start teasing out where are all these kind of potential problems that are going to impact us, rather than looking at what's already impacted us. You can set a very simple initiative to say, right, who can come up with the most potential problems in their process today, and start rocking it, but always with that sense of urgency. Re-improve what's improved for further improvement. So we're never done at this stuff. There's always room for improvement. No problem is always a problem, and no potential problems is a bigger problem. So there's a key point there. We're never done on this stuff. If you walk around areas and there's no problems, then there's a huge problem, because the people aren't really engaged and they haven't got the readiness or the ability to surface the right things in the right way. And then the last little thing, a thank you is really powerful. How many times are we actually thanking our teams for their kind of contributions, and when they have resolved an issue, just a simple thank you can kind of work wonders, sometimes even more powerful than a big financial reward. If we're doing that frequently, it just helps people feel valued, so that they can deliver value. So I've done a lot of talking there, a few slides. I was conscious I only had 8 minutes. There's a lot more that we can go into that, and we can tease out some of these elements in some of the Q&A and on the panel. But that's a starter for 10 anyway to get us going.
Thanks, Mark. Excellent.
Oh, one last thing. I did have one more slide. Sorry about that. So linking back to that engagement slide. Yeah, so there was some research done by Gallup, and 75% of workers, believe it or not, are actively disengaged at work. So that's just kind of a heads up. So when you walk around, there is a hell of a lot of people that actually are just in it just to get paid and not really engaged in their actual work that they're doing for whatever reason. So back with that sense of urgency, don't delay, act today. There's things that you can do now to improve that.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks. And we'll flick back to Alfie's slides, because what we wanted to do next, and just on that last point from Mark about that 75%, if we think about all of that, all those people who we can actually activate to improve. So Alfie, we're going to ask a Mentimeter question as one of the first, which was, where do people feel they are? So going back to the either scan the same code, and the question, if you want to go on to the question. What do people think is the first thing that you would do to drive performance on site? And then we'll get this going, and then what we'll actually get the panel to sort of start talking around this. So communicate, productivity, obviously a massive one. Preparation, interesting. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting that communicate keeps sitting there in the middle as the big one. Just interesting there, you know, there's engagement, collaboration, and communication. So as we just so what to the panel, James and Gear, what would be your sort of thoughts on what Mark's just been through, but also those points around, you know, they've got their recognition, collaboration, or anything else you would suggest when it comes to projects?
I suppose I was thinking about this during the presentation, and I had a thought in my head, and it said make it easy, but it's probably the wrong way of looking at it. It's probably make it easier. That's I suppose in challenging times, site applications and construction projects can start to be difficult in terms of the commercials, the programs, etc. So I think as a bit, like we have to try to make it easier for the people on site, and that spans lots of stuff. It spans everything here. It spans the communication. It spans planning. It spans planning in time. Sometimes site, it can be a reactive process, but we need to have it as a proactive process. So we're planning. So I suppose the bit is try to make it easier than it is right now, and I think that's our challenge. And I think if we can do that, I think then the people on site then have a collective goal. And the collective goal should be always on site is to get to the end and be very proud of what you've done, and clap each other on the back and say we've done a very successful project. So really that's what I take out of the first thing is try to make it easier, not make it easy, because sometimes site can be challenging, but make it easier.
Okay. James, you're obviously in the throes of a massive project, 14-acre site in London.
I think for me, the communication piece is so vitally important. My take on that is, and the word that comes to mind for me is about listening and actually engaging with all of those good people that in an industry like ours are absolutely fundamental to delivery of projects. One of the points that Marc made in his presentation, you know, a thank you goes a long way, but I also think in simple terms, listening and acting on what the team feel are their challenges and obstacles and blockers to driving good performance, and being able to work with them to help unlock those. And it might not be necessarily delivering a radical technology-based earth-shattering sort of solution, just listening to people about those things. So often you find and particularly in some of the bigger projects that we work on, the simple things, the easy things, like how far away the changing rooms are, or where the good people go to grab a drink and a bite to eat, and what we can do to make those things easy, which makes them feel included. And I think more and more in our industry we'll be talking about inclusion and well-being and how that really helps us to drive high performance.
Cool, excellent. Because and I do see there that the word leadership has popped up as sort of one of the sort of seconds. So we've got two communicates, like communication, communicate, and then leadership. Okay, so make it easy, or make it easier, because it's not easy. Listening and communication. Cool. If we move on to the second question, Alfie. How would people who we've got on the call today rate that their people are actively engaged? So on going back to Marc's score of 0 to 10, where do people feel their teams are? And as we say on the left there, we've got the turning up or showing up and then doing everything right. So we're looking at about 6 to 7. So we've got quite a scale of opportunity. How would you guys on the panel see that? You know, we don't need to say what your organizations are like, but how would you sort of rate that as a sort of from what you see in the industry?
Yeah, that resonates very strongly with me now, and with the project we're working on at the moment. I'd feel uncomfortable if we were seeing there a score of 9 or 10, because at that point where everybody thinks they might be doing everything right, you're missing an opportunity to learn. It's also encouraging that we're not right down at the other side of the scale, because that's a very challenging place to be. But where we've got an engagement in that sort of, you know, upper mid-range, 6s, 7s, 8s, it's great. You've got a group of people who are open to challenge, open to different solutions, and actually who will probably be really well driven to perform well and to improve.
What do you think, Gear? What's your thoughts on that?
I agree with James. I think like if we're seeing 9 and 10, it's probably wrong. We're in the right zone there, and I'm a little bit, I suppose, maybe a little bit surprised, but pleasantly surprised where that is, because I think the upper range of 7, 8, that's really where you need to have your people at. And again, it means that they are actively engaged, and then it means that they're driving towards the same goal, which is a collective goal. And so pleasantly surprised with that figure, and I think it's where it should be and where it needs to be.
Marc, go on. It was you started to scale. Just add to that.
Well, yeah, that's certainly a good score. I'd echo that. And there's been projects that I've kind of been on where they've been hovering around that kind of mark. What I would still say is there's 30% opportunity there. So where we're looking at a 30% uplifts and improvement across the work that we do, there's still a good chunk of people that we can kind of tap into. Those 30%, for whatever reason, can have a raft of kind of great ideas and good experience that potentially we're not harnessing. So even that being 6.9, there's a massive opportunity there for engagement. It's not just the people, but it's all their ideas and experience that is going kind of that we're missing, really. And the other thing that I would just kind of challenge a little bit to kind of think about is also think about the levels across your project. So when we're looking at operatives and first line supervisors, and then project kind of management, etc., does that figure actually change at different levels? So something else to kind of think about, or even different subcontractors. Sometimes it's amazing the difference that a line manager has on influencing that figure as well. So yeah, food for thought, but it's definitely a useful, simple question to kind of ask and kind of set up that can start to expose a raft of opportunity.
So that's good. And I'm just going to refer on to Kimberley, who'll come on shortly on the next panel, because on that scale about the doing everything right, we need to also help people look at what we want them to do. So there's going to be a challenge come next. As Marc said, there's 30-40% maybe of people to engage, but we also need to be then clear, and we'll come on to this, about what are the right things for them to be doing, because busy isn't always necessarily right, but that engagement's good. So Alfie, what have we got next? So what are the barriers in engaging your supply chain partners to drive on-site productivity? Because it's not all about just the clients and the prime contractors, it's the supply chain partners as well, all of the supply chain. So we class consultants in that, from design, it's everybody. What would people suggest? Okay. Yeah, pulled up their conflict in priorities, because I think somebody said that collective goal, and we sometimes are those collective goals as clearly defined on projects. I think the other groups will come on to some of that. Traditional ways, digital, cost. Okay, so as so we've really got their mindset seems to be sticking there in the middle. Knowledge, communication, training are all things, if you could look at it, really are there for us to be able to do something with. So what do you guys think about that? I don't mind who sort of starts with that one, if you like. Yeah, you and James, looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, look, there's a good range of really interesting words and thoughts there. I think maybe just to share perhaps some of my own experience with teams working around sort of barriers. Some of it is about courage and bravery and just putting it out there and having a conversation. On a project I worked on a few years ago, trying to understand what the challenges were to performing day to day and delivering against the plan, we decided to challenge the more junior members of the team to get out and have those conversations. And there was a couple of reasons behind that. One, it would help them to develop themselves and create a relationship with the supply chain. They were vulnerable, if you like, and so were at times sort of nervous about the conversations they would end up having with the supply chain, who naturally might be more experienced or worldly in their particular element of the work. But also it enabled them to ask those really simple questions that opened up all sorts of solutions, if you like, and it drove relationships, and particularly where we were looking at some of the junior and maybe more diverse members of the team. It created a real can-do attitude. And so I see now that the communication piece has come right into the center of the page there, and that really is the vital thing, that we don't know all the answers. It's a team game, and understanding, asking the questions, and getting all of our groups involved in finding the solutions is absolutely vital.
Excellent. Gear, Mark, anything? Because we're wrapping up a little bit now in the last couple of minutes.
I would just say, so if you take those three words there, mindset, communication, knowledge, and linking back to that engagement question that we kind of posed earlier, fundamentally for me, it's all about ensuring that our teams actually and our people feel connected. And what I mean by that, there's three ways of thinking. Are our teams connected? Do they really feel a strong connection with the customer, their internal customer, and the end customer, the ultimate customer? Are they really connected to the process and the end-to-end process? Or do they really understand what issues can be presented to them, and also what issues that they can actually potentially pass on? So having a strong connection there, and this links back to the kind of knowledge, communication, and a bit of this mindset. And then the third area of this kind of connection, where we want them to really feel a strong connect, is actually within the team itself. So they actually feel a strong connection and part of the team, and a key enabler to help them deliver the performance that's actually needed to satisfy back to that connection with the customers. So yeah, it's about connection and helping them see really and understand.
And Gear, just to wrap up as one sort of final comment and a couple of comments.
Yeah, I suppose this is probably one of the biggest challenges in construction, which is late engagement, because early engagement is the optimum for a project. So I think really your partners need to be like, there needs to be trust, and there needs to be knowledge with your partner. But as I said previously, your supply partners need really to be part of your team with the same goal, and the goal is to create a very successful environment to get to the end of your project. But I think that this is really a challenge within our industry, because the industry tends to have late engagement with your supply partners, which creates challenges all the way through projects.
Cool, brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much, the three of yourselves, for that and the discussion. And I've been capturing some of those key words. And what's interesting with all of what we've just been running through is most of that, I would say all of it, doesn't need huge investment, are things that we are actually able to enact and do within our current environments and our current projects and organizations. So that's fantastic. So we're not talking massive investments. These are things we could crack on with. And hopefully from an audience point of view, quite a bit different to what you might have been thinking in terms of, it's all about the people. So, Alfie, I think we're going to move on now to handing over to the next panel, which will be chaired by Ian Heptonstall, as I said, Director at the Supply Chain School. So I'll hand over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning to everybody. Fascinating first panel, and looking forward to moving on to this panel now as well. So, yeah, my name's Ian Heptonstall. I'm Director of Supply Chain Sustainability School, and people often ask me with the school, how come that we've got that name sustainability in there, but how can we look at these different subjects? Well, for me, sustainability it's environmental, it's social, but it's economic as well. And there's no point being the greenest business out there if you're not in business next year. And if we're going to be true about being more sustainable and reducing carbon and reducing waste, we need to know how to build better. And we're all in very interesting economic times at the moment. And I think having a conference like this where we can look at how to drive efficiency through the site work, through design work is really, really important. So yeah, so looking forward to this session. So what I'll do first of all, I'll ask my three panelists to introduce themselves. I'll start off with Dale, then move on to Kimberley, and then on to Darren. And then when we've done those introductions, we'll come back to Kimberley, who's going to just do a little bit of a scene setting for us, a quick 10-minute presentation. So Dale, first of all, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Hi. Good morning, Dale. Good to see you.
Yeah. Hi, Ian. Good morning, everyone. So hi, I'm Dale Sinclair. I'm a director of WSP and head of digital innovation. So most of my projects are certainly far away from being business as usual, and we're looking at lots of different things around platforms, kit of parts, and all of those elements. So yeah, really delighted to be on the panel and to have a discussion. So thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Dale. And I know that you're working globally as well, so it's really interesting to hear what global great practice actually is. Yes, that's great. So thanks for that, Dale. Kimberley, who's sat in San Francisco by the look of it, which is a great place to be.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kimberley Wild, and I'm a performance and improvement manager for Octavius Infrastructure. I work on lots of business processes, trying to make them more efficient for our people, and also deliver lots of different bits of lean training internally and for our supply chain as well.
Thanks, Kimberley. That's great. And then it's not appearing on my screen yet, but Darren Wilson, logistics manager at NG Bailey. There he is. Hi, Darren. We obviously NG Bailey have been long-term partners of the school and been doing some very interesting work around offsite and lean and what have you. So, Darren, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello there, my name's Darren Wilson. I'm the logistics manager for the Northwest region of NG Bailey. I'm originally from the construction industry and I am a bit of a Lean Six Sigma ambassador.
Thanks, Darren. That's absolutely great. So we've got a really interesting, diverse panel to look at this subject about how can we use offsite, modern methods of construction to actually accelerate delivery performance on site. So Kimberley, over to you to give us a 10 minutes setting the scene, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just bear with me a second while I share my screen.
The others will all turn off our cameras in the meantime.
Perfect. Okay, can I just check that you're all seeing the screen? Yeah.
We are. That's great. Thanks, Kimberley.
Perfect. Well, first off, thanks for having me today. Let's face it, we are all in challenging times with tighter budgets, tighter programs. Less space is one for me. The construction sites that we go out to, we're finding that we're working in tighter areas, sitting alongside communities, and of course we've all got the skills gap that we are trying to mitigate, and also a huge carbon agenda for all of us. We need to evolve our current way of working and evolve our mindset and actually integrate with each other. I think from the previous panel, one of the things that I took from that was actually, whilst we all, we have designers, we have clients, we're all customers of each other at one point or another, and we really do need to get that integration of each other, better collaboration between us all. To enable that evolution of the way we deliver our projects. And one way of doing that is through offsite construction. So offsite construction refers to manufacturing, planning, design and fabrication and assembly of building elements at a location that's not where their final installation is intended. And this can really support the speed and efficiency of constructing a permanent structure. Okay, so when we're thinking about how we will deliver our projects right up front, we need to be thinking, can an element of our works be designed, built and fabricated and transported to a place of install? We really should be considering that right up front. So there's some examples on the screen and benefits as well, but control of delivery and proper planning can result in approximately 20% fewer on-site days. Okay, so really enabling us to secure and stabilize our programs. You know, when we look at programs and the way that we deliver our programs, there's so much risk that's embedded, and earlier on panel 1 we talked around hidden waste, and by visualizing our programs we're able to see and visualize the hidden waste and eliminate it, and having 20% fewer days on site would offer us, you know, program stability, you know, enabling us to think, actually, you know, we are going to deliver when we say we're going to deliver. Work in a factory can be scheduled to start at the same time as the site's being prepared. So we've got parallel working, people working at the same time in different locations, resulting in quicker build times. And products that are manufactured in the factory and delivered on site when required. So there's no, when we're talking around space restrictions, you know, there's no need to find storage on site to store your products and materials. It's all delivered ready to go to the point at which it needs to be installed. So we're looking at just-in-time delivery. Offsite construction is used to mitigate current labour shortages. So one of the most popular benefits of offsite construction is the process requires less labour on site, which is obviously a very good cost saving, and also mitigates any health and safety risks as well. We're decreasing installation times. So there's when materials are arrived, it's pre-manufactured, so installation times are decreased, again stabilizing your programs. And the construction process is taken away from muddy sites. I think we all know that we can't control the weather, so that often plays a massive part in overruns and not getting it right first time. So, you know, factories offer us a controlled environment and enable us to enhance quality, reduce those safety risks, reduce waste as well. We're seeing that communities are less disrupted. One of the biggest challenges I think we find is in our industry is that our communities want to see us making a difference, you know, enhancing the infrastructure, providing better infrastructure for communities to use. But also they don't want to be disrupted by that enhancement. So offsite again is you know, enabling us to open infrastructure far quicker, giving them the right first time, quality control, and of course just better productivity, and we are affecting the carbon agenda as well massively. Got a really nice example of some offsite fabrication. So this was at our Swindon White Hart Junction, which led to a huge risk reduction in the operational railway, reduced track access, and shortened the project duration. So by constructing the new overbridge over a 25k electrified main line, we would have needed massive disruptive possessions and posed a risk to the railway during construction. By simplifying, and again from panel 1 we talked about, can we just simplify these processes and the way that we deliver? You know, we're getting reduction in track access and minimising on-site works. So this particular example, we're seeing track access reduced by around 10%, programme duration reduced by 10%, and reduce risk to the railway during construction, which is obviously what we want. We don't want any risk to people or the infrastructure. So we're reducing those works required at a track level. So huge amounts of benefit using offsite manufacturing. And again, I think we need to open our minds really early on during project delivery is how can we do this differently? How do we evolve from traditional on-site methods and look at off-site opportunities with our supply chain? And I think that's really important when we're thinking, actually, how do we do this differently? Is engaging with suppliers and designers much earlier on, really investing in that upfront collaboration to deliver off-site solutions. What I want to go on to next is supporting delivery performance. And again, most of this back end of this presentation is around, can you see the waste? Can you visualize it? And what we do find in a lot of organizations is that there's a lot of back office chaos that can really impact the performance of your delivery. Okay, so we can often see delivery and the back office as support functions as two separate things. You know, they're not working in tandem and they're viewed as working in isolation, when in reality they are very, very much linked. And we can help or hinder our delivery performance by looking inwardly, by taking stock of how we do things, understand the waste, the value, and ensure process flow. So in Octavius, we get lots of problem statements, as we all do in this industry. And one of the things that we discovered that some of our process just aren't being followed. Okay, and when we engage with our site teams, they tell us they've got too many things to do. So we step back and we go, why are they so busy? Where is their time being spent? What we do know is that people don't come to work to do a bad job. Everyone comes to work with a good intention of delivering exactly the product that's required. But with that, our systems, our processes tell our people how to do the work. So it's important that they do follow them. But if they're feeling the frustrations, they're feeling pain points through our processes, we need to know about that so we can make a difference. So we went on to do a bit of an investigation around why are our people so busy? Have we got some data, you know, it's data, not opinions, that can tell us where their time is being spent and how do we make their lives easier, better, deliver according to process and be compliant ultimately. And one of the things that we found was that actually only about 53% of the time our site managers or our sample of site managers were doing actual site management activities. And that's 53% is broken down on program management, physical works, supply chain management, and just general management tasks. Okay. And for me, that's quite concerning because we want them to feel like they're doing the site management activities as close to 100% of the time as possible. One of the big things that, again, as an organisation, was that 25% of the available time was spent on document control activities. So this activity was done over 2 weeks, so 14 days of data for 9 site managers. So 180 hours was spent doing document control. So we kept breaking this down further and understanding, does that happen all the time? Is it every hour of the day? And it was true to say that document control activities are taking place every hour of the day. And then what we wanted to know was actually, were those activities an internal requirement? So was it our own systems and processes that were dictating that those activities needed to happen, or was it a customer requirement? And actually 82% of the time it was internal requirement, which again really sends us some red flags to say actually our processes aren't fit for purpose for these site managers and we need to make a difference. Okay, so very much looking inwardly at the way we are asking our projects to run. Okay. So if we focus on management as the biggest spender of time, and again from panel 1 I heard the word reactive, and for me one of the the biggest challenges is actually our site managers are so they firefight so much of the time. They're constantly problem solving. 84% of activity has been recorded as a planned activity. So then we've got 16% of the time where we are firefighting. 16% might sound like a really small amount of time, but given the duration of the trial and the number of site managers, actually that's huge. We don't want them to be reactive like that. We want them to be really planned and logical and know what they're doing and what's coming up next. So a lot of what we do is meetings, and it's probably something you've heard 1,000 times, you know, too many meetings. You know, we need to really find a better way of collaborating and communicating with each other. And one of the things that I will advocate is collaborative planning, and also a visual management. Communication without words is just as important as communicating through voice. Okay, a lot of meetings that we attend is about assessing performance, understanding what's the status of play, and there's so many tools that we can use, from proven methodologies and tools in Lean, that can enable us to assess performance. Again, without words, we're still communicating, but through visual prompts and signs. Okay, so for me, this data is, I wanted to show you this because actually, are you looking inwardly? Are you challenging the way we deliver projects? Are you challenging your processes and your systems to be effective? One of the things that we find also is that our processes and our systems are so old that, you know, they're not up to speed with today's technology and today's ways of working. So have these moments to just check back in on yourselves and say, does this process need perfecting? Can we make this process more efficient? And you will, your delivery teams will reap those rewards, and they'll thank you for it as well. And also, just again on the communication link, we actively engaged our people in this study so that they felt like they had a voice to tell us where it wasn't going quite right for them, what the frustrations were. And also, just another bit of data on general admin, is predominantly emails. So it's not the things that are really making the difference. It's not getting the project team to its goals, to its commitments, and they're not really adding value. So 53% of the time we're adding value, the rest of the time we're just being busy. Okay, and that's costing our businesses burden, money, time, effort, and it's also costing our people. It's putting burden on our people, and it's driving the wrong culture. Okay. We want people to get it right first time, but the only way they're going to get it right first time is through better processes and systems, taking a check back in yourself, and understanding where the value add opportunity is. So a question for you all really, and to sort of challenge your mindsets, is, are we truly adding value and allowing our processes to flow? That's it from me.
Kimberley, thank you very much. Kimberley, thank you very much for that. That's excellent. Do you want to just take your sharing of the screen down? That'd be great. Yeah. Wow. So I took quite a few things from there. I got the simplification piece was really important. I think this whole piece about supporting delivery, performance of the teams themselves. Quite often there's a tendency in the industry to just blame what happens on site, and it's all site's fault, isn't it? Yeah. Well, actually, well, how can we design in differences? How can we make sure the right processes are there? And I think all of us can look at ourselves and say, when are we truly adding value as opposed to just being busy? And there's some horrible shocks there in terms of that dealing with emails. What was it? I think it's just dealing with emails. Does it actually add value, etc.? Yeah. So thanks for that, Kimberley. Really interesting. We've got a number of questions for the audience, and based upon those questions, I'd like to have a discussion with the experts we've got on the panel. And Dale, I'm probably going to come to you first, because the first panel, first question we've got, and we'll open that up now. I'm sure you've all got the Menti code in front of you. What's your experiences of design services enhancing delivery? So how can the design function enhance that delivery? Or do we quite often see design happening by another organization in another place, and then it's just like the design is handed over to the contracting team and the subcontractors told to get on with it, and they look at it and go, well, I wouldn't have designed it like this, or I wouldn't have built it like this, etc., etc., etc. So in a word, really, folks, what's your experience has been about the design services in enhancing delivery? I think you can actually use more than one word if you wanted on this, but it's I'm sure Dale have many words for us. Yeah, I like the fact that we've got that critical piece in there. If we don't, we don't get the design right, we're just going to design in problems for the contractors and subcontractors through the whole process, aren't we? It will be too late. Dale, feel free to comment on these as they're coming in. Yeah, go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Ian, the big thing is integration. I can't see if that's in there. I don't see that, because I mean, I think Kimberley made some brilliant points about the waste in the process. And just now we've got the traditional process, if you like, and as you know, Ian, we're trying to move beyond traditional ways of doing things. So it's great to hear everything Kimberley said. But for me, that point where we as a design team traditionally take things to design intent and then someone picks it up. I mean, there's so much waste in that. So for me, I love it. And with some of the clients we're working on, where we can get that design to flow from stage 2, almost, I mean, our goal is to get right down to the machines that are making things. So move away from traditional information, move away from drawings, move away to using the models more, and moving people into that 3D environment. But the next part of that is then saying, well, how do we then get true, workflow right down to the machines that are making things? So yeah, I mean, as you know, Ian, we've spoken before about this. I think, I mean, it was great at the start. There's a lot of contractors and subcontractors on the call, and that's absolutely brilliant to see. And we're working with some of the companies on this call. But I guess for me, it is to really drive proper offsite, we need to get economies of scale. And I know we'll come on to that in some of the other questions. And I think we can only do that when we start to look beyond the single project into programs. And we can only do it when we've even got clients collaborating to say, right, listen, where can we share elements? Where can we standardize elements, floor to floor heights, or whatever it might be, grids that might then encourage a whole new generation of products. But right now, I think that kind of separation of the design team from the delivery team, I think is a huge problem to try and scale up offsite. And it's great to see that we're seeing a change in that happening.
And we talk about offsite, we're really talking about the whole range of modern methods of construction. And your piece there about, I think somebody's put it on the slide, about lack of collaboration. You put a different spin on that. It's about integration. And when you talk about the delivery team, we're not just talking about main contractors, we're talking about.
Well, of course, yeah. Very much. I mean, well, that's a good point, Ian. I mean, I think some of the contractors are doing amazing things around logistics and all these elements, but I mean, for us, it's trying to get to, I guess it's trying to pull some of the supply chain members almost out of the being so far downstream that they're doing drawings every time, to say, well, can we pull some of the specialists out? So the example I always use is like toilet pods. Well, why do we have to do fab drawings every time? Why can't I, as an architect, go to a catalogue, find a toilet pod, configure it, put it into my drawings, and then we're good to go? All that waste that we just spoken about all of a sudden disappears. It goes into thin air. And that's certainly what we're starting to do on some projects, and certainly where we see the future kind of moving towards.
Thanks, Dale. You mentioned there as well about that kind of early contractor involvement piece. And Darren, I don't know, NG Bailey, that thinks about, as an M&E contractor getting involved early on. I've heard from many M&E contractors who said to me, well, we get drawings and we kind of, first thing we do is put them in the bin and then get on to our own drawings. And that doesn't sound very efficient, to be honest. Darren, over to you. What experience do you have?
Obviously the early engagement for NG Bailey is absolutely key. Well, it's critical. We go through a phase of prototyping and standardization from the design process, which allows us to reduce the amount of modules that we design and the range of those modules. And I think on the Forge, we got it down to 5 different types of modules, which is a fantastic achievement for that size and scale of building. But also, I'm glad Dale mentioned about the distance between, where the poles have gone in, the distance between the actual stanchions, because that will very much determine what type of module that we can build. And obviously, if we have that early engagement, then that standardization process and the prototyping, which enables us to learn as we develop, absolutely critical.
You need to be integrating with the other trades as well, don't you? You need to be integrating with the concrete formers, the structural steel work companies, the people that are doing the external envelope for the building, etc., etc. And you ideally would come together at Dale mentioned stage 2, which I think will be an ideal place. Is that possible? Does it happen often?
It does. Oh, where do I start? Give me that last piece again, please, Ian.
Yeah, I was talking about the need for you to engage with the other trades, and with those other trades. How often do you sit around the table and collaborate and really be integrated with the whole design teams at that stage 2? Does it actually ever happen, or
No, it does happen, but ultimately, what we want is absolute collaboration, not just a token gesture of collaboration, because that's where the true efficiencies evolve. Understanding what other people have to do with that project, understanding the overlap of where we may be designing our modules, but it might have a consequence to somebody else. And if we can get early engagement from the rest of the subcontracting team, then we can eliminate some of those at that stage, instead of going into a build phase and then finding those problems at a later stage.
And who needs to provide the leadership to allow that early engagement and collaboration? Who sets that tone on a project?
Well, in all honesty, it starts from the top with us. From an NG Bailey point of view, it starts from the sort of managing director, from when that project is first heard about and tendered, etc., right through to the offsite team and their early engagement, so they can see what they need to develop to create this sort of sustainable, better, leaner approach to ensure that we actually save money ourselves, and as a consequence, that might allow other people to save money on projects.
Yeah. Dale, can I come back to you on this? Because clearly design teams historically always get involved before the kind of main contractor or from the subcontract trades. So what responsibility on the design teams there? And also a supplementary question to that is, a client might not know what they're asking for. So but they, at the end of the day, all clients want the same things. They want their projects delivered on time to great quality, don't they? And on budget, But are they interested in the way it gets delivered, or is that really for this collaboration of experts to make it work?
I think it's quite mixed, Ian. I mean, some clients are quite prescriptive in terms of what they want, and whereas other clients say, well, you're the professional here, why are you not telling us to do it? But I've heard a few people in the last couple of years saying, when you ask them, well, why are you not doing BIM, or why are you not doing D for MA? And it's like, well, the client didn't ask for it. And it's like, well, and my answer to that is, well, hold on a minute. I don't know a single client in the world that doesn't want things to be faster, cheaper, safer, greener, better. So both of these things do that. So why would you not just be doing it as a default? So I think that's the sort of thing that we need to get out there. People shouldn't be doing it because they're asked to do it. They should be doing it because we all agree that, look, this is the way to go, and it's better for all of us to do this kind of stuff. But I think one of the things that I do think about quite often is the whole faster horses kind of thing. So I mean, I genuinely believe, as you know, that we're going to reach a paradigm shift by the end of the century. Well, it's not century, decade, sorry. Century's a bit far away, but by the end of this decade. And look, I think we're seeing, I mean, we're seeing the pilot projects pushing, we're seeing that now moving into next generation projects. So I think we can see the momentum, but you know, the innovation curve tells us it will take a long time to do that. And again, I've got some clients who are starting to look at a program level, because for me, it's the platform and program approaches that start to drive real innovation when you go beyond a single project. So for me, that's the priority, is finding the clients that really want to drive a change across multiple projects. And I've got some clients where we're doing like, you know, massive change for like tens of thousands of homes around new ways of doing things. And I think once those case studies bubble up to the surface, I think people will see things. But I think, you know, it's back to Steve Jobs or Henry Ford and that you know, faster horses. It's quite hard to sell a vision which is quite different, because people just right now people want faster horses, and what we're trying to do is to give them a Model T Ford or an iPhone, but it's a vision that we have, and I guess that's what we are trying to sell, is that vision. But it's great to see more and more clients getting on board, and for me, case studies are king in this space. And I think as more case studies bubble up to the surface, I think that's when we'll see a lot of change starting to happen. So I know some people get despondent because they think change isn't happening, but I don't agree with that. I think there's radical changes finally happening, and we've got a raft of technologies that we can do pretty much anything that we want now, Ian, which is, again, it's a big driver for change.
Thanks, Dale. That's good. Our next question, which is coming on the screen now, actually, well, I think, picking up on what you just said, we should have phrased this question slightly differently, because we've talked about how can offsite manufacturing support efficient project delivery, but actually the key point I heard from you there, Dale, was it's about programs, isn't it? And Kimberley, obviously you had a slide there, didn't you? You might want to come on this, because you talked about the case study of the bridge over the railway line and the benefits which came in from there. But how do you learn from that efficient project delivery there, Kimberley, and how do you take that forward for the next job you're going to do, and the next job and the next job? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ian, because I'm sat here listening to Dale, and you know, I think as an industry we need to become the factory. We need to start visualizing our projects as being delivered in that one factory. You know, yes, we have bespoke projects, but they all have something similar about them, and we just need to adapt the scale of the product that we're providing, and we can only do that through program delivery and through investing into our supply chain to come together to deliver the whole program, rather than looking at projects in isolation. And for me, I think that's the next step. It's changing that mindset to, we have lots of bespoke projects to deliver, to we have a program, and these are the elements of that program. So let's, as an example, you may have one project with 3 gantries on it, and then another project with 7. Well, actually, you've got 10 to deliver as one. Let's look at it as a whole. And I think the more we get into that mindset of our program is the factory, and the space and the environment to deliver, the more efficient we can be, and we'll be able to gain more offsite solutions and opportunities to deliver offsite. And I think until we get to that mindset, you know, we'll see marginal improvement on program and sustainability. I think once we get to that bigger program level, we'll gain a lot more from it.
Kimberley, you talked about the industry becoming a factory. So I'll just put up the next question, because talking about factories and the UK's offsite construction sector, which of these statements would best characterise where we are as an industry at the moment? Would you say the UK offsite construction industry is exemplar, it's on the journey to success, it's ripe for improvement? That's a great bit of management speak, isn't it? Or is it woefully inadequate? So we've got quite a few ripe for improvements on there, yeah? So is nobody going to go for exemplar? Oh, got woefully inadequate from somebody, and on the journey to success. Yes, so yeah, absolutely, yeah, I think that's really interesting.
I would definitely agree with that. I think right for improvement is where I would place the industry. There is so much opportunity, but again, I think it's that whole integration of the customers and, you know, internal, external customers, and where you are a customer on the journey is important to know, and also just investing and collaborating properly, you know, proper ECI provisions available for everybody, and I think that's where you'll gain a lot of the improvement from.
Kimberley, a really nice closing remarks there. So I'll just come to Darren and then on to Dale for some closing remarks as well. Darren, I was struck by this, your thing where you said simplification, and we got down to just 5 different units on a particular job. And what struck me then if that's a program, is those same 5 units on the next job, on the next job, on the next job, makes a factory flow, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talk about efficiencies on the construction site, but if we can get our offsite as efficient as possible to make that cost reduced as much as we can, then we're also seeing the benefits and knock-on effects of sort of better financial situations on our projects and our budgets. The statement which best reflects our offsite construction sector at the moment, I think, depends on where you sit and your knowledge in that area. So, for instance, I come from the automotive sector, and it can appear to me that we're woefully inadequate. However, the more sort of research and investigation I do, I know that people want to change, and I know that they are trying to change. So maybe I'll reflect on that and go right for improvement.
Thanks, Darren. Lovely closing remarks. Dale, final words to yourself.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it seems a bit harsh on ourselves here, actually, because I think what we've got to remember is there's 90 billion of construction in the UK, and we're not going to get all that into the factory overnight. So, and I think all the steps that are happening, I mean, yes, it does take a lot of patience, and yes, it takes, you know, people to have good behaviours and all the things that Kimberley's spoken about. But I think we're on the journey, and I think that the journey keeps, you know, it's like a sage in a week. Did I finish this week a little bit further forward than I did at the beginning? And most weeks it's yes, I did. So I mean, that's great, and that's what it's all about. But I think my final thing is that one thing that we haven't mentioned here is cost, and I think the only thing that's impeding offsite right now is cost, because every other metric smashes it out of the park, you know, carbon, timescales, everything. And I think that's probably where we need to do the biggest piece of work. A lot of the cost data is back of house, and I think if we can expose that and look at how to drive down the costs with economies of scale, I think that's where we start to really drive change. Because with a lot of clients, if you're £1 more expensive with offsite, you're back to traditional. And you know, and it's that if we can get 20% below and get that message out there, then that's it. We'll never go back to construction ever again. So to me, that's the one thing that we need to focus on.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Kimberley, and thanks, Darren. That wraps up this session, and I'm really pleased to say that we're now handing over to Alasdair Reisner, who's the Chief Executive of SECA, Civil Engineering Contractors Association. So, Alasdair, I'm passing the baton to yourself.
Thank you very much, Ian. I hope you can hear me. So yes, as Ian said, I'm the Chief Executive of the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, but for today, I'm just a mere chair for this final panel session. I do feel like a bit of a fraud here because today's session is about delivery, and yet we're not going to talk about delivery. We're going to talk about the stuff that comes before the delivery. But I think that's really important because we know that better quality delivery starts with the pre-construction, starts with the design, and we definitely know that poor delivery begins with poor pre-planning. And if you want a real world example of why this is important, why this is particularly important in challenging times, as I've been sitting here watching the other presentations, I've had an email come in about a fairly substantial scheme, tens of millions of pounds, that's not going ahead because it's no longer affordable. And it's in our industry's own best interests to get the pre-construction right, because if we're not set up for success, our industry's customers are going to find themselves with increasingly challenging positions in terms of moving forward to that delivery that the whole industry benefits from. So I'm going to ask Ed McCann and Tony Turton to do a bit of a scene setter presentation first. But before I do it, it's probably useful that we do actually introduce our panelists. So if I can ask Graham, Tony and Ed to put their cameras on. And Graham, if I come to you first, are you happy to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Alasdair. I'm Graham Edgell. I'm the Procurement and Sustainability Director for Morgan Sindall. We've got a supply chain that's something like 3 billion in value per annum, which covers sectors from housing right through to maintenance.
And Tony?
Marc at the beginning talked about gamekeeper poacher. So I started off as a designer, moved to project management, and then was a client for multiple years in government, responsible for delivery of the Smart Motorway Programme, which was in excess of 5 billion. In the last couple of years, I've been on my own. I'm now sort of working as a contractor and a consultant, so I'm seeing it from the other side. So I'm looking at it from all angles, which is quite good for me.
Brilliant stuff. And finally, Ed.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ed McCann. I'm a civil engineer. I'm a director at a company called Expedition Engineering. We're an engineering design consultancy, but working a lot in the sort of productivity improvement area.
That's great. So Ed, I'm going to come straight back to you because I think you're going to kick us off with just some food for thought about this subject about pre-construction and how we improve performance in designing and setting up for success. So straight back over to you.
Thanks very much, Alasdair. Yeah, so one of the projects we did recently was we were appointed to help HS2 develop and implement a productivity improvement strategy. And as part of that work, we did a fairly comprehensive read across the whole sector to find out what the state of things was in terms of efficiency and effectiveness in that case in infrastructure delivery. But what you see on the screen in front of you are a series of findings from that work which are sourced variously. I'm just going to rattle through them because it gives you a scale of the challenge we face, but also in using management speak I heard referred to earlier, the huge opportunity that's available to us for improvement. But first of all, something like 10 to 25% of project costs arise from avoidable error, and some of you will probably know the Get It Right initiative who did that. So 10% down at the sort of simple project, highly repetitive, low levels of complexity and interface, and 25% when you get into the complex, lots of M&E systems and so on. Some 10 to 15% of materials by value brought to construction sites are waste. Multi-tier procurement leads to waste in prelims and management. Potential savings in about the 20% range possible. And you heard earlier people talking about some of the problems with management on a project, let alone when you start having multi-tier person-on-person marking and management flows through the supply chain. Plant utilization, if anybody who is involved in manufacturing, when they see the plant utilization rates we have in construction, they start crying because we frankly have so much plant sitting doing nothing. And indeed, as Speedy Hire found out yesterday, they've lost 10% of their plant and they didn't even realize. 25 to 50% structural materials not necessary to comply with codes. We've got pretty gross over design going on for a number of reasons. Construction programs and schedules, circa 17%, it's quite a precise number that, but circa 17% suboptimal. What that doesn't say, but which is also true, is we virtually never ever build in accordance with our construction programs anyway. So we have a P6 program which might have 25,000 lines on it, and the job's being delivered by supervisors and site engineers working on 4-week look-aheads in Excel. Productivity, labour utilisation, that number is 40 to 60% on average across UK construction on possession works and linear working in infrastructure. It's often down as low as 10 or 15%. The amount of time that people spend moving between accommodation and the work front is staggering in our sector. The amount of time that they're unable to proceed because they don't have the materials, the instructions, or can't get at the work face is really notable when you start measuring these things. And we get we end up in a position where actually in our system, most organizations are actually benefiting and sometimes depending on the waste of others, which is a very perverse outcome. And you may say, well, that can't be true. We don't operate like that. But ask yourself whether the person who supplies concrete is happy or sad that the main contractors had a very bad day, the concrete pump didn't work, and they ended up throwing all the concrete on the floor. The answer to that question is, well, the person supplying the concrete is delighted because they get to supply and charge for even more concrete. And when you look at every single part of the supply chain, you'll find that whether your designer's being told to redesign because the client didn't get the planning permission or that you wanted, and so on, you find that an awful lot of organizations are benefiting from the waste of others and the overall dysfunction process. Anyway, so what does that end up in? If you want to please change the slide, in true Grant Shapps style. The Iron Law of Mega Projects. So this is a study done by the Save Business School looking at 16,000 plus projects around the world, of which less than 48% are on budget, less than 8.5% are on budget on time, and less than 0.5% are on budget on time and on benefits. On benefits meaning it did what we intended it to do in economic terms. And the next page. And this is a breakdown of the same data set looking at different project types. And this is a global thing, but the pattern is broadly the same in UK projects. And so we see there on the top line, the cost overruns. And if you look at buildings, cost overruns on average 62%, with 7 out of 10 building projects running over. Nuclear waste is a particular interesting one there, with almost 240% on average cost overruns, with 9 out of 10 running over budget. And if you look at the schedules, those are average schedule overruns across that 16,000 project data set. So what all of that means is, if you move forward to the next slide, is that as a sector, we suffer from gross and endemic waste in most, if not all, of our processes. The opportunity, as I said earlier, for improvement is huge. I believe that efficiency improvements of between 30 and 50% are perfectly achievable. Interestingly, Nick Smallwood, who's chair of the Infrastructure Projects Authority and speaks to government on infrastructure projects, in a sense he's the senior civil servant in the infrastructure space on project delivery, he's walking around telling people he thinks the answer is 40%. So I agree with Nick Smallwood in that. Next one. And all of that, of course, is not news. Many of us, certainly the ones with grey hair, have been watching this story unfold for our entire working careers. And many trees have been felled, writing reports and undertaking studies to explore what the causes of this problem are, and some of the stuff you were hearing earlier about modern methods of construction offsite are seen as part of the solution palette, and so we go. But it remains the case that we're not moving fast enough to address this issue at all in our sector. I think, is that the next one, the last one? Just a brief reflection on the origins of the productivity problem, because it's notable that this problem has been around. The first reports I found on construction sector, poor productivity in the construction sector, date from the 1930s, and we've been writing those reports ever since. And they all have the same kind of justification, explanation. They talk about fragmented supply chains, lack of investment, unstable workflows, so they're not able to invest because they don't know if they're going to get the project that comes after the project they're on. And so, but in summary, what we get in this productivity space is we don't focus enough on value, which ends up in suboptimal outcomes. We don't focus nearly enough on waste, and anyone from a manufacturing background, particularly those who followed the Toyota story, will know how important a focus on waste is in driving process efficiency over time. And just on that subject, in our sector, we don't even know how much we waste. I mean, I've been asking people, how much concrete do we bring to site that doesn't end up in the building? And you'll hear people just look at you and go, oh, we don't measure that. And then you find someone who does measure it, and they'll say things to you like, well, I did a study for that on a major contractor, and we found it was 17% of the concrete we were bringing across these building sites was ending up on the floor. And they then implement, as soon as they've measured it, they start going, oh, we can do better than that. And within a year, they've got that down to less than 4%. So it can be done, but we just generally don't ask. We don't make effective use of technology to enhance value and reduce costs, and we have pretty inefficient and ineffective enterprise models in terms of the way we relate to each other and what we get paid for. And on that cheery note, I'll hand over to Tony.
Yeah, almost seamless, Ed. Dale talked about cost in the previous panel, and as a client for many years, there's been a large focus on reduction of cost on major projects. Most clients are looking for around 20% reduction in cost. In Ed's previous slide, I work in the highway sector for the whole of my life, and Ed's got a figure of 16% cost overrun in the highway sector. That surprised me. I actually think the figure's much, much higher than that. But most clients, driven by government, had this real focus on cost reduction. We've got to take cost out of our projects. My view over many, many years is we are looking at this through the wrong lens. Just picking up on something that Ed and most of the other panels have actually picked upon. Quality in our sector, when we ask what percentage of right first time is it? And I'm talking from the very concept in design through to the handover of the keys of the project at the end, beginning to end, what percentage of waste is in there? And as Ed said, we surprisingly don't measure that as an industry. But when you ask people, designers, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, most people recognize it's between 30 and 40%. If we just looked at quality with the same focus that for many years we've been looking upon safety, I think we'd start to change our views on what really drives cost. On highway major projects, prelim costs are in the region of 40 to 45%. So on the program I was looking at, a week was between 300 and 500,000 pound a week. So therefore, if we just got it right, just 5 or 10% more often, we would take time out of our programs. If we take time out of our programs, we get cost savings almost as a byproduct. And also right in the middle of this triangle, we've got health and safety. And there are numerous studies that show you show a quality environment, your health and safety figures are at the same time very, very high. If you go into a car factory nowadays, you could practically eat your sandwiches off the factory floor. They are not grubby environments. But we are in a different environment at site level. Can we just move on to the next slide? Picking up one of the other panels earlier is about if we wish to get the project right, we need to move from a master servant approach to integrated working teams. I've deliberately put the slide together as a circle and trying to come away from the client instructing the contractor, this is what I want. Many instances, the client does not realize or does not know exactly what they want. And we bring a designer in, we bring a contractor in, we bring consultants in, and we bring subcontractors in. We've talked about, over the last hour and a half, early contractor involvement. But the earlier, the better that some of the expertise is brought in. In many, many instances, design is either incomplete by the time we get to site, or it hasn't been through enough checks involving the principal contractor or the suppliers or specialists to actually say, is the design buildable? Can I actually access that part of the site? So on a motorway, when you've got linear activities, if you're working in one area and you're doing excavation, that prevents actually you getting to the next part of the site. So we need to think not just about the design, but the practicalities of how the scheme is delivered. In many instances, we bring the subcontractor in and the subcontractor is asked to price drawings. And when he gets to site, he said, well, I can price what's on the drawing, or actually I would give you a different solution because I would do it in a different way. Prime example would be piling. You'll see on the motorways many emergency areas that are being built with big retaining walls at the back. The works to actually get the piling platform in many instances are as big as the actual activity of putting the piling in. And many times the principal, the subcontractor has come in and said, you've got the wrong solution. So we've got a design, but it isn't the right design. And what we do is we end up going back and paying for standing time for the contractor to stand still while the design is redone and the subcontractor works out actually what is the best method of actually doing this. So if we just sort of took a couple of the panel discussions earlier and we look at the car industry, which somebody else talked about, can you imagine 30–40% of cars coming off the end of the track wrong? Can you imagine going into Currys and buying a TV and 3 out of 4 of the TVs that you buy have got faults on? You just wouldn't buy the TV. In manufacturing, you'd go bust. So why is it in our construction industry, we almost accept it? So there are opportunities, there are areas which are ripe for development for effectively more efficient, more effective, more economic delivery. But primarily it relates back to having the team working together, a focus on quality and time reduction, whether that's offsite manufacturing, whether that is effectively engagement of the team very early on. But ultimately, if we start looking at cost first, we're looking at it through the wrong lens. Right, I'm going to hand over to our chair.
Brilliant, Tony. Thank you very much for that. I think from both you and Ed, that might be what we call a provocation for a discussion now. So we are going to turn to the Mentimeter again. So if you can get ready by your browsers or your phones to respond to our first question, if we can bring that up. Oh, yeah. No. So I think we've sort of front run this, as you may have a clue to the answer to this, but how many projects were delivered on time and on budget and to the desired outcome? So you've got some options there. This is a test of how many people were paying attention during Ed's presentation. So as that's going through, I think we'll have the discussion, and I'll bring Graham in at this point, because you've heard there from Tony and Ed about, in essence, the problem statement. So I'd be interested to hear from you your views on how we get through this, how we do set up projects for successful delivery.
Okay, well, initially, let me tell you, Tony's absolutely spot on. We're in a challenged margin environment in construction, and we're being charged at entry cost to make a decision rather than being judged on value. And so as the tier one needs to be engaged as early as possible, but also not just the tier one, there is very little client interest in what the supply chain underneath that tier one is. And therefore you encourage an auction process again, so you've got 2 shouts at cost. So cost is being the overriding thing all the way through the process, rather than the value and the outcome. And so obviously we all accept early engagement, but you've also got to have a culture for perfect delivery that is not just on budget, on time, it's got to be snag free. You're never going to get the 4 cars out of 4 or the 4 TVs delivered otherwise. And so it's not new, but we would encourage, and I think most of the other tier ones would say the same, for the client to encourage cluster management so that the best person does the right job. because at the moment everything's managed by trade rather than by process. And so we should encourage via a cluster management process to share the challenges and the resources. So it's not rocket science. It's pretty much clear for everybody.
Excellent, Graham. And same question to Tony. I mean, you talked about the sort of the background of the problem. Can you just elucidate a bit more about what you think we all collectively could be doing more effectively to address the problems that have been outlined in what you and Ed have said?
Yeah, we could have quite an academic discussion about the difference between program management, portfolio management, and project management. But many government-led construction projects are now looking towards program management. And even though we are pushing for program management, every single contract I ever went out to would always try to explore the differences rather than the same. So in Kate's example of 6 gantries, many designers go, oh yeah, but this gantry is longer than that one. This gantry is in a slightly different location to that one, rather than, well, actually 90% of the gantry is exactly the same. And as a sector, whether you are the designer of the gantry, whether you're the manufacturer of the gantry or the person who's going to put it up, if we are in a McDonald's approach where every restaurant is the same restaurant, and Latham said it got to be 40 years ago now, effectively we move from project to project to project, and we take the learning, the expertise, and we get better and better and better at it. We'll drive the wastage out. And just on Graham's bit, it's a passion of mine at the moment. The margins that we work to in this industry are so low. And how do we improve them without increasing cost? Take the wastage out and look for the same. So whether it's offsite manufacturing, whether it's a different focus on quality, whether it's effectively production rather than construction, we have to drive wastage out. We have to look for similar areas rather than differences. And we have to work as an industry together rather than client, contractor and subcontractors.
So Ed, I'm going to ask you to build on that, but it's also going to be a bit challenging because I think everyone on this panel has got some time in the tank in this industry. We saw the reports over 20 years, 30 years, going back to the 1930s even. I suppose my question is, what do you think we can do differently, but also how are we going to make sure that we do things differently going forward, and we don't just end up our kids having exactly the same discussion in 20 years time?
So is that a question for me there?
It is, Ed.
Yeah. So I think that I just a couple of observations before I answer your question directly. And the first one is to say that we love the idea of a sort of panacea solution, a magic bullet, something we just do and then everything's all right. And I feel that part of our problem is we've rushed for those sorts of solutions. Our solution is digital. Our solution is frameworks or partnering. Our solution is offsite. This kind of, just one-line jokes. And I'm afraid the situation we're in is far more complex than that, and it can't be solved with one-liners like that. So I think we have to recognize that we're in this sort of complex and quite variable circumstance, and we need to break it down quite deliberately. And a lot of people in our world are very good at that. They take really big complex challenges, they understand what matters, they target appropriately, and they intervene. We do that in our day job. We struggle to do it, if you like, at our system level. But I think that's what we must do that. The second thing to say, but moving on from that into what's different now and why should we or could we succeed, is I think roughly you get a go at this. If you look at the history of this, roughly once in a generation, the stars align around a burning platform for change and a capability and willingness of the sort of industry to actually push forward. And I think we missed a trick. We were at slightly unfortunate timing with Egan, which was the last time, in my view, this really turned up. And part of the problem was that actually the economy was doing too well in the early noughties. And it was rather too easy for a lot of people to make money doing what they'd always done. for them to really drive change into their business models and the way that they did stuff. I think we've come around 20 years later and we find ourselves in a situation where actually the burning platform is getting hotter by the day. And we do have a series of opportunities, new technologies and new insights that should enable us to deliver some of the change. So there's no guarantees in that, Alasdair, but I would say that we've got an alignment of stars between the challenge of reducing materials and energy for climate, the economic challenges of building more for less, the perilous state, a parlous state of the industry itself, and low margins, low attractiveness to investors, low attractiveness to people who might come and working. So you've got a proper burning platform, and you've actually got some things that we can really do. So we've learned a lot about process engineering. We can learn more and focus on process and so on. So my conclusion is embrace the complexity and make proper strategic choices within there, utilize a good crisis that we've got at the moment to drive and embed change. And my final one was we really must focus on process improvement. I think this is the thing we completely miss in our industry, is that the learning from manufacturing is how they put the process at the core of everything they do, and then they get the people onto the process with a purposeful outcome in mind, and they grind through it. They improve the process by stabilizing it, by automating it, by using data to optimize it and so on. And there's a huge amount we can do, whether it's on-site, off-site, down a hole or up at the top of a building, to optimize and improve our processes on-site, in a design office, in a client office, and everywhere. And there you go. There's my recipe in 3.
Fantastic. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Just build on 1 second just on that. One thing that Ed's just picked up on there on processes is, in order to improve a process, we really need to know what today looks like. And in many, many instances, we've lost actual measurement. How many curbs a day is a good output for a curb layer? In years gone by, we used to have time and motion studies, and guys used to get bonuses based upon outperformance. And we seem to have lost the measurement of what does good look like on a day-to-day, not on sophisticated things, but on fairly simple activities that enable a construction project to be built. And we have to sometimes not look for magnificent solutions, but just go back to basics and do the basics well. Plan, and then deliver, but have a realistic plan to start with. And I think, I know it was Ed said that effectively it was 10 or 15% was the figure. We put sophisticated P6 programs in, but nobody's delivering to them, and nobody really understands whether the program itself was based upon meaningful productivity data to measure whether your performance was good or bad.
Brilliant. Now, this is called delivering in challenging economic times. And one thing I do want to do is deliver in time to Marc to round things up at the end. So I'm going to give the final word to Graham, and it's just to build on what Tony said there about measurement and making sure we know what we're dealing with in the first place. How do we make that? You've got this role looking at overseeing the supply chain. How do we get that to be custom and practice on the day-to-day in the supply chain, so we know what we're dealing with and we can improve it every day on site? Oh, you're mute.
I'll try and be as succinct as I can, but the thing is that everybody got the drift. If you don't measure it, it doesn't happen. But the industry's gone the other way, and it measures the wrong things. What we actually don't do is we don't measure for positive outcomes, which is where Tony was actually driving us. And so the incentivization piece and everything else. But if you took the earlier keywords from the Mentimeters, communication, 80% of our delivery is done by an SME, and yet the language changes on every job. And so you can't manage the process and manage the measurement until you've got the language so he understands what we're measuring. Keeping it simple, making sure that we do things like, if you're going to drive on cost, instead of measuring waste to landfill, you should monetize waste. Monetize waste on every job if you're a client, and then incentivize the tier 1 to reduce it. Because at the end of the day, get the key measures correct, use telemetry to make sure that we understand if the plant is idling. And it's not just driving cost, it's actually hurting the environment and the sustainability stats for the job. I could go on for 10 minutes, but really it's about language and measuring the right things, not everything, but positive outcomes.
Brilliant. With that, we are on time, and I'm very confident that that was to the requisite quality as well. And I will hand back to Marc to close things out for the session. Marc.
Great. Well, look, thanks very much there, Alasdair. It was more than on quality. It was absolutely fantastic. And to be honest, even awe-inspiring in terms of, the scale of that opportunity. And really, just to wrap up, I'm not going to run through all sorts of things, but I think Ed really sort of had some key bullet points there in terms of the stars aligning, the capability and willingness that we saw earlier, the engaged workforce. The platform is getting hotter and the clients are demanding this. And from what we've been talking about, with the various words I've put down, communication, collaboration, engagement, they're things that we can get on with. I think Ed also had a fantastic comment about people rushing for magic bullets rather than appreciating, I think he's used the word with me before, it's a marathon. And there's lots of wins in that marathon, but it's still a marathon and it's a complexity, but there aren't simple single bullets that are going to fix it. But all of the things we want to do are actually within our grasp. So look, that's really the summary, if you like, and also just to recapitulate that image of the fact that we have to raise the performance of the industry. So Alfie, just flicking on to the final slide. We would like people just to fill in a feedback form. So you can come out of the Mentimeter and just take a scan of that. And whilst I'm wrapping up, fill in the feedback form, looking at, so we can just improve how we deliver these. And then on the final slide, Alfie, because I'm conscious we're getting through to 12 o'clock. Really, what we wanted to say to people is you can contact any of the presenters, as I said, myself or Ian, and all the slides that we've been through today will be issued to you by the end of play today or tomorrow. The recording of today for you to go back over will also be made available early or middle of next week. So I think there's some real nuggets of goodness, greatness even in there. And I'd just like to thank all the panelists for all the time they've taken to pull presentations together and think about this, and we've prepped for it. So just thank you very much to all of those, and to all Ian as the supply chain school and Alasdair for chairing the last panel. But I think everyone would find today, or hopefully found today, inspiring and within reach for us to go away and do something with all of those things that we've heard about. So thank you very much. And we'll see you again on another panel shortly. Thank you.